Oh my god, that's crazy.
Look what I got in the mail.
Dun, da, da, da. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Now, if you are a knitter or crocheter, you might be familiar with this. This little thing is I-cord, and what it is basically 3 stitches on your knitting needle that you knit over and over and over and over again without turning your work in order to make a tube of knitting. So basically 3 stitches, it's being worked around in a tube because what we're doing is we cast on 3 stitches, we knit across those 3 stitches, and then we slide our work to the other end of the double pointed knitting needle, and then you knit it again. So you're not turning your work, not flipping your work, you're basically knitting the same 3 stitches over and over again, just sliding your 3 stitches to the other side to start again. This is how we hand knit I-cord. Now, this is sometimes used for trims, for drawstrings on a bag, for finishing edges, all sorts of different kinds of applications of I-cord. Now, let's be honest, making this by hand is slow. It can be a little bit inconsistent. It could take quite a while. Now, you can make I-cord by hand like this on your 2 double pointed knitting needles, but you could also knit I-cord on a circular sock knitting machine, which is what I've learn to do as well. So basically what you do with your circular sock knitting machine is you remove all of your needles from the cylinder except for 3 or 4 or however many stitches you want. So I was doing 3 stitches, and then you just basically knit over those 3 stitches, and it does the same thing as when you're knitting by hand. It just kind of knits those 3 stitches over and over and over again until you get a cord. So you can see the I-cord that I managed to crank off of my CSM, just like a minute of cranking this tube. Now, the tricky thing with this is also consistency. I have some very lumpy bits where my tension was not totally correct. So you can see some very lumpy I-cord there. I mean, it started off really well and then ended up getting more and more lumpy. Now, I received this in the mail. This is the Caydo Electric I-cord machine. So it's an automatic I-cord machine maker. Now, I've not even opened this box, but the little gadget inside promises to make this process completely automated, making perfect, beautiful, perfectly tensioned I-cord. So we're going to see if this works. This claims to be highly efficient and could potentially save us hours and hours of sort of tedious I-cord making, and maybe we could use it for leftover sock yarn and also do something like that, make some I-cord for decoration or for other purposes. So we are going to open this box together and we'll walk through the setup and see how this actually performs, and then I can give you my thoughts about it. Okay, so the first thing that comes out is a set of tools. So there's a screwdriver in here. There's a couple of extra needles. These needles are just like my CSM needles, basically. They're the latch hook needles. And there are a few, no, there's a darning needle in there and a giant hook as well. So that's the little tool kit that's inside the box. Okay, so inside here, this must be power. Oh, look, there's yarn in here too. There's a little ball of yarn that's included. Here's a second ball of yarn. 2 balls of yarn included in the package as well. And so I'm not sure what that does, but so this is this part here. When the team picked this up at the studio, they said it looked like an iron, but it's supposed to be an I-cord machine. All right, and here is the power plug. And so you can see it is USB-C. Now this is the actual machine. Ta-da! It does kind of look a little bit like an iron. So just having a quick look at it, you can see this is where the needles are. Okay, so that's where the latch hook needles are. There's 4 of them, so it's making a 4-stitch I-cord. This is going to be very interesting. I did not see any instructions in here. We're going to have to find some instructions. All right, so there were no instructions in my particular box, so we're going to figure out how to set this up. All right, so I am just guessing that because they gave us this arm and because they gave us this screw, I'm going to screw this in here. So power is on the back. Turn it on. So yarn must be coming in through here. I see what this is. This is the tension for the yarn coming into the device. So you want your yarn to feed in through here. It's going to be grabbed here, and then it's going to come out this end. But then the question is, how do I get the yarn to come out this end? Oh, okay, so this moves up and down. This flips up so that I can fish yarn out this way. Okay, so let's give this a try. So I'm going to flip this up. I'm going to be able to pull yarn out this way, and we'll see how this works. All right, so this goes up. Put the yarn into the tensioning device. It looks like it needs to go through here. And then it needs to go through this whole contraption. So in order to get through, I need to stick this in. Hold that. And let's try. I'm going to stop it for a second because this latch has been closed the whole time. Oh my gosh. We can increase the speed. Okay, let's turn it up one more time. To be totally honest with you, I did not know what this I-cord maker was going to do. I didn't watch any videos about it from anybody before, and I didn't really know anything about it. I just received an email and said, would you like to give it a go? And I love knitting machines, and I said, absolutely, let me give it a try. I am so surprised. It's really cool. There are no instructions in my box for how to set this up, so I had to figure it out on my own. It's relatively intuitive because I do have that Caydo electric ball winder, and so I got the picture about how the tensioning device was going to work. That's fine. So the way that this functions is actually very, very similar to the circular sock machine that I have, the hand crank one. Basically, this little hole here on this plastic, that's the yarn carrier, and that is delivering the yarn to each of these latch hook needles. There's only 4 needles, so you're making a 4-stitch I-cord, but basically the yarn carrier is taking the yarn from the yarn mast, this tension on the yarn mast, and carrying it around and around and around, and all of these needles on the cylinder, these 4 knitting needles on the cylinder, basically stays stationary, and they are being lifted up and then pulled back in order to make the stitch. Lift it out to catch the yarn and then back to make the stitch. And again, yeah, it works basically the same way as the CSM. Now, with any sort of a circular sock knitting machine or circular knitting machine, you typically need to have some sort of weight on the fabric that is being formed. Otherwise, if there's no weight, the stitches will fall off the needle and you'll just have a giant mess. But the way that this works is that there is automatic tension added to the I-cord as it's being formed by this whole contraption. So you can see here, there's this little tab where you pull it up in order to uh, disengage these two rollers. You can see the rollers here. Right now they're squeezed together. They're holding onto the fabric, just like if you were cranking with a machine or holding onto your knitting and you're tugging down on the yarn you're tugging down on the fabric that's being made. That is what this roller system is doing. It's pulling down on the yarn, giving enough tension so that the stitches can form at the needle end and be pulled down, and it just spits out I-cord at the end of it, and there's so much of it. This happened so quickly. It happened so quickly. And all of the stitches, because this tension is the same all the time, the stitches are nice and even and consistent. I don't know why I'm so shocked, but I'm shocked. And then you can see that there are 3 different speed settings on here. So there's 1, 2, 3. So off, 1, 2, 3. So when you change the speed, it just speeds up. It makes it a little bit faster, and then it spits out I-cord a little bit faster as well. But I change speed from 1 to 2 to 3, and I don't notice any difference in the consistency of the stitches. The stitches look the same throughout all of this I-cord. So this is fabulous. Now, one thing that I did catch as it was starting to knit the first couple of inches, is that I was actually missing one stitch because one of the latch hooks was closed. And so you just have to check that. If your latch is closed, if the latch hook is closed, then it cannot make a stitch. And so basically you have a dropped stitch in that one spot, but because you're making a tube, you don't really notice that you have a dropped stitch. So I just noticed that it was closed. I had to manually open it up again and get it running. There's a spot here where this I-cord is made with 3 stitches, and then I figured out that I dropped one. We added that needle back, and then this section has 4 stitches. So you can see a ever so slight difference in the diameter of that. Now, if any of those needles break or the latches break, they did provide replacements. So there's a full set of 4 and a second full set of 4 latch hook needles if you need them at a later date. And then of course they have included a plastic darning needle, so that way you can finish your I-cord. So when you do want to finish your I-cord, you can cut it off here and you will have live stitches. And what I would do is I would just continue running the machine so that the cord comes all the way out the back end, and then I would take the darning needle and then pick up those live stitches, cinch them up, and then you would close off your I-cord like that. Now, I went online and tried to find a video or tried to find some other kind of information about this particular machine, but I couldn't actually find anything about this. I see there was an older version of the I-cord machine. There was also a manual I-cord machine, but this I-cord maker is very, very different from the previous generation. It's a completely different configuration. The old version, I think, was sort of upright like this and looked more like a cone. It looked more like a circular sock knitting machine, the orientation. But this is a little bit different. And I wonder if it basically helps with holding the yarn horizontal. There's less tension on it. So I do have my yarn wound into a center pull ball, and then I put it into sort of a yarn bowl so that it can roll around, so that there's not too much inconsistent tension on it. And then as for the machine itself, the previous versions that I've seen of this machine have a clamp. So you have to clamp it to the table. But in this case, this is actually pretty sturdy. It's got a bit of weight to it, so it's not like it's going to go anywhere. So I just had it sitting on the table. I have it plugged into the power, and then this yarn bowl on the floor with a nicely wound ball of yarn, and then feeding into the tensioning device, pull it through this entire machine, and then have it come out the back. And it's amazing. It just works. All right. So, I mean, I think that the benefits are pretty obvious. It's going to make a lot of I-cord very, very quickly. You can kind of set it and forget it pretty much, except that you as the operator, you might still want to be next to it to make sure that you know that the latches aren't closing, that you haven't dropped any stitches, that the tension is okay, that all of the I-cord that's feeding out the back is not getting tangled. So you still want to be able to like have an eye on it while it's working, but it's relatively quiet and can just kind of work alongside you as you're doing other things. And then what are you going to do with all of this I-cord at the end of the day? I have some ideas about what I want to do with all of this I-cord in sort of a multi-craftual facet. And that is basically to take a lot of this leftover yarn that we have in terms of like, we have a ton of leftover sock yarn. I have sock yarn left over from all sorts of projects. And so if I was somehow able to make I-cord with all of that and then use this I-cord to then become weft in a weaving project, I think that that could be really, really interesting. I've been seeing a lot of this type of weaving called passementerie, which is like making lace borders and trims and ribbon, those kinds of things. And so I have seen that you can use something like this, like I-cord, something that's thick like this, and then weave it in, say, to a very, very narrow inkle loom or very, very narrowly warped loom where all of the warp threads are going to be very, very closely packed together. So your warp is going to be warp faced, but then your weft is going to be, you can set it up so that it's sticking out either side of it and make a nice, interesting looking ribbon at the end of the day, something like that. I'll show you when it's done. Of course, there's lots of other crafts that you can do with I-cord, and so Caydo has lots of ideas on their website as well, things that you can do. Or you can just make a whole bunch of this I-cord with your leftover sock yarn and then set it up as garlands. That's what we did at Christmas time at the holiday season at the studio. We set it up and we had tough love garlands hanging everywhere. And if you could make that without having to hand crank it or having to hand knit it, be fantastic. You can also use this for decoration. You can make different shapes and then basically embroider them or sew them onto your knitted projects, on your hand woven projects. You can just basically use this wherever you would use a decorative cord. And you can make lots of it now. So like I mentioned before with the yarn, you do want to stick to something that is smooth yarn. So this is fingering weight, you could use DK weight, you could use worsted weight, but you want to use something that is smooth in texture. I wouldn't use anything fluffy or fuzzy or any kind of fancy yarn, tape yarn, textured yarn. I wouldn't do anything like that. If you want I-cord with that kind of yarn, I would probably make that by hand, just because I am sure that it would jam inside this machine and you probably don't want to have to deal with that. So if you are someone who needs to make a ton of I-cord, if you're making crafts with I-cord, this is a great way to do this. So I'm so curious, what would you make with this I-cord maker? What would you do with it? Maybe there's lots of kids crafts that you could do. I would love to hear your I-cord project ideas in the comments below, and I'd love to see what you all come up with. Now, if you've decided that this little machine needs a special place in your craft room, I do have a link and a discount code for you in the description box below, so be sure to check that out. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you found this review helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more of our content. It really helps our channel out. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.